Good evening, campers, and welcome to Quality Improvement IH 743 Style. This video podcast is on the art of process mapping, which is one of the most important management tools for quality improvement. A process map is a workflow diagram to bring forth a clearer understanding of a process or a series of parallel processes, and it's at the core of many exciting quality improvement approaches such as Deming's Total Quality Management Model, TQM for short, the International Standards Organization criteria, ISO 9000, which some of you may have heard of, Goldratt's Theory of Constraints, no acronym for that, the Baldrige Criteria for Excellence, again no acronym, and of course the Balanced Scorecard. All of these are widely used in business management, but have all been adapted for international health as well. Simply put, if you don't understand what's happening, then it's very difficult to determine if it needs fixing or improving. Process mapping, as the name implies, is a tool that enables us to capture the steps in a process at the level of detail we need to either explain the process or to identify any problems with it. In theory, we should do a process map for every project we undertake, as it forms the basis for understanding what actually happens in a process so that issues can be identified and then the process improved. Done correctly, it can help identify waste, identify communications issues, identify all of the people involved in the process, show complexity, explain the whole process to a group, and identify who should be in your project to improve the process. Process mapping has many different names that you may come across in the literature. Swim lanes, SIPOC, which stands for Input Process Output for Customers and Suppliers, flowcharting, and activity diagrams. And as I've already said, it's at the heart of all quality improvement models we're likely to encounter. For our purposes, process mapping enables us to diagram and understand what we're doing. It helps us to be clear about what's expected, helps us understand where decisions are to be made, helps us to understand where measurements can be made, to determine where the bottlenecks are, and to identify where improvements can be made. So what does a process map look like? It can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. In this example, a simple approval process of a voucher passes through a check. Is it complete or not? It's passed on for approval, it's approved, and someone is reimbursed. In this example, a seemingly straightforward request to travel on company business leads to an extremely complex process diagram identifying all the points along the way and multiple parallel processes that have to occur before the ticket can be issued. We can use a process flowchart to describe anything, and I'm going to help us build a simple chart to get a bottle of soda from the machine on the 4th floor of Crosstown. We always start our map by determining the boundaries of our process. Where does the process start and where does the process end? The start event triggers the process to begin. It can be anything: an action, an input, an idea, a want or a need. In my example, the start point is, I'm thirsty and I want a soda. The end point is the outcome of the process. It can be an action, it can be an output, but again it can be a want or a need. In this case, it's I'm drinking a nice cold soda. So we draw these 2 points in ovals. Now we go on to identify and label activities and decisions that lie between these 2 endpoints. Activities are a single action. They're typically written as a verb-noun combination. For example, submit a report. And it's important to be clear and concise so that we don't get misinterpretation. Activities are represented with rectangular shapes. The shapes are connected with arrows to show the direction of the process. So in this example, the sequence is: we walk to the 4th floor. We insert $2 into the machine. We select Diet Pepsi. We take Diet Pepsi. We take change. We drink Diet Pepsi. Obviously, I could simplify it more. I could simply say, go to the 4th floor, buy Diet Pepsi, enjoy. Or I could make it much more complex by adding more detail to the steps. For example, go to elevators, press up button, enter elevator, select 4th floor, etc. How complex I make it depends on my needs. But what if it isn't so straightforward though? What if I get to the machine and it says use correct change only and I don't have the correct change? Or worse, what if they don't have any Diet Pepsi? What will I do? And even worse, how will I represent it in my diagram? For this, we have to have a different box that represents decisions. These are typically drawn as a diamond, and they divert the sequence of activities into 2 or more directions. And usually, they have a yes or no response. Thus, in this diagram, after walking to the 4th floor, we check to see if we have the correct change. If yes, we insert the change, we get our Diet Pepsi, but this time we don't collect any change. But what if we don't have the correct change? The answer to our question is no, and then we walk away abjectly with our needs unsatisfied. So now let's look at another scenario. We have the right change, we insert it, all nickels, but who cares, we're thirsty, and we can wait. But now the wretched machine only has Mountain Dew, so now we have to make another choice. Do we like Mountain Dew? Are we willing to accept Mountain Dew? If so, we take the Dew and we're happy. But what if we don't like Dew? We're out of luck again, and it's off we go with no drink. So you can see that a process diagram can get complex quite quickly, and it needs some careful thought as we put it together. When we build a process diagram, we have to be systematic and follow some basic steps. We have to determine the boundaries. We need to list the steps we follow. We need to sequence the steps properly. We have to draw the appropriate symbols for the steps. Once it's done, we need to check for completeness and then finalize it. I find that it helps a lot to build this up using post-it notes so that they can be moved around as needed until I feel comfortable with things. But don't forget that check for completeness. It's a common mistake to have an arrow that leads to nowhere. All arrows must lead to an action, a decision, or an endpoint. There are other symbols used in process charts. I've already mentioned the start and end point, and also the activity symbol. We've touched on the decision point, but some other common symbols include the document. You'll find that many processes lead to documentation, sometimes ending in documentation, sometimes then going on to the next action. Delays are one of the most important things to note in a process map, especially as they represent a point at which quality improvement process can be introduced. I like to think of delays as bottlenecks. Finally, sometimes you can't fit the whole chart on a single page, so you want to show that it's continued on another page. Or it can fit, but it needs to be drawn on another side of the page. So we have symbols to indicate those connections. System activities for me most commonly represent things like databases. And then finally, it's often helpful to have some sort of explanation of what's going on, and annotations help to interpret what we have. You don't have to memorize all of these, as I have a handout for class. So that's it. I hope you grow to love process maps, and I'll see you in class on Tuesday. Bye for now.